Photoshop can edit a wide variety of video formats, and now even in Photoshop CS6 Standard, you can do video editing. I am going to start by choosing File Open, and I will select the Fountain MP4. Photoshop can open a variety of video formats: MPEG, MPEG-2, MP4, or M4V, MOV files, which are QuickTime, and AVI files. I will hit Open, and automatically Photoshop built a video group for me. I am going to name this Fountain, and I can name my video layer if I have a few of them. I am double-clicking on the middle of the file name to be able to rename them. Before I get into the editing, I am going to switch to the Motion Workspace. This way I have a little bit more that applies to video editing or motion editing in Photoshop. I will also make my timeline a little bit taller, and just to show you what's in this video, I will click play. Now it goes on from there, and the camera starts to wiggle a little towards the end. So I am going to move to the end of the video track and shorten it. And I love this previewer. That's brand new to Photoshop CS6, where I can see exactly what's happening as I shorten the timeline. I am going to shoot for 6 seconds. There we go. Now I want to put in a rectangle that fades in, and we'll add some text over that. So to the right of the Fountain video track, I am going to add a new video group, and this one will be my rectangle. So I will double-click on the timeline to get out of the way. I will name this rectangle, and I will go to a vector tool, the Rounded Rectangle tool, and simply draw a rounded rectangle. Now I also set the radius to 40 pixels. Out of the box that will default to 10, but I increased it, and if I look at my timeline, you will notice I am at the end of the movie. When you insert new objects, it gives you a default length or time in the timeline, so I am going to stretch the rectangle so it extends to the whole movie. And now you can see the fill color. I will expand the rectangle, and I will slide to 2 seconds in the movie, roughly. You actually get count directly down here in your timeline panel, and I am going to set the opacity to mark it at 100%, where it is now. Now I will slide the playhead, which is the technical term for this red bar, back to the beginning of the movie, and I will put in a keyframe by clicking this gray diamond, which adds a spot where a change on opacity can take place. I will make the opacity of the rounded rectangle layer 0%, and when I press return or enter to accept that, I can click play, or I actually love to use bar. I will show you that while I am playing it. Spacebar will pause him or play again. I hit it twice to pause and play. In fact, at this keyframe, I think I will have it and not go to 100% opacity. We will only go to 80, and he should stay partially see-through for the rest of the movie. So let's try it out. I will hit spacebar to play. In fact, as I scrubbed the timeline, that's the technical term for moving this red play head, you could see when you let go where the opacity stands at that moment in time. I will click play or hit the spacebar, and it stayed 80% to the end. Now I am ready to add my text. So I will click over here and add another new video group, and you don't double-click here to name it. I was wont to do that. You do it directly in the Layers panel, so I will name this Type. Then I will double-click my timeline to collapse it, swap my colors so that when I create type it's black, and go to my horizontal type tool and click once anywhere on the document, and I am going to type the code. A job fills drop by drop. So one click. It may look odd right now, depending on where you are in the timeline, and it's difficult to see, so often I will just zoom in to make sure I have got everything typed properly, because I am going to make this come in from very tiny and grow very large. So I hit Command plus or Control plus to zoom in, and I hit Command 0 or Control 0 to fit in window. And now I will double click on my timeline to bring it back up. And the reason you can't do the type is just depends on where you are on the timeline. The rectangle will also be fading in, so what I am going to do with the type is just have it start a little bit later in the timeline by dragging it to the right. Now I will move my playhead to where it starts. I will click the triangle next to the type video layer, and I am going to do a transform. But before I do the transform, I want the type to be centered and grow out from there. So a little trick. I can go to my Move tool and hold down my Command key or Control key, Command on the Mac, Control on Windows, to select the background video and just center the text. And that way it's centered up and down. This way it centers left and right. I am going to click back only on the type layer and just visually move this up. Then I can Command click or Control click and now center again to make sure it didn't move. So I have got the type where I wanted, and it's going to grow in small. So I will click the stopwatch next to transform to put in the keyframe marking the tiny type size. Then I will scrub close to the end of the timeline, put another keyframe in, and to do edit, free transform, and a little power user trick. Hold down Option or Alt to scale from center out. Very important when doing video. I also added the Shift key in to keep it proportional. And there we have it. I will press Return or Enter to accept the change. And as I scrubbed backward, you could see that coming in and getting bigger. And at this point, I am going to mark this spot and do opacity by clicking the stopwatch. Opacity, or how transparent it is 100%. I will scrub to the end of the timeline, put in another keyframe, and make my opacity 0% so that the text fades away. I will scrub back, and let's go all the way from the beginning, and I will hit play and watch it through. And there is your first video creation. When you are finished, you could choose File Export, Render Video, choose the format of your choice, and I usually select the folder that I built for you in your Chapter 9 folder called Video. And I will go to Medium Quality. H.264 is one of the biggest standards, but there are a few others there, and there is even presets for your iPhone or iPod, for Android, and for YouTube or Vimeo. I will click away and just leave it on medium quality and hit render. Once it's finished, I will minimize Photoshop, open that up, and take a look at my final movie. Video editing, I feel, has gotten a lot easier in Photoshop CS6. In the first few versions, I was a little intimidated by it, so I didn't use it often enough. Now, even though I teach Adobe Premiere, I find myself going to Photoshop because I just love the tools, and I live in Photoshop on a daily basis anyway. The longer your video, the more time its export stage will take, and I really don't like to think about the time we spent watching ProQuest's bars. Great, it's done. I will minimize Photoshop, I will open the video folder, and there is my rendered fountain movie. And I will hit play. Now I could have done high quality, and I am recording at the moment, so I might re-render this just to make it a little bit smoother, but I am very happy with the effect that I created. So see if you can grab some movies of your own and experiment in Photoshop with creating video layers. You even have the ability in Photoshop CS6 to edit the sound or put in new audio tracks if you so choose. If you keep the timeline in mind as something that mirrors layers for the stacking order of your video elements, it gets a lot easier. I hope you have enjoyed this tour of video editing in Photoshop.